Oop. Okay. It appears as I got caught finishing off a spindrift, it was peach strawberry for the working man. Now I'm on to water. Yeah, sorry for the impromptu stream. Well, I'm not sorry for it. Sorry I couldn't be better at warning. Let me make sure my levels and everything. All right. My stuff's telling me that I am indeed producing audio and video. All right. I don't have my act together with the video yet. Hopefully tomorrow. So I thought since, it's my channel. I can do this. I would flip-flop and do some more article reading today and discussion today. And then I might do it tomorrow too, because I feel like I'm behind on those anyway. But if not, I'll try to get a video out of the way. If I can. I'm not good at the planning out of the videos. I tend to get ideas and kind of run with them. So sometimes it works great and I have a bunch of ideas, and sometimes it's a struggle. Right now, I don't know, it is a struggle. It's just hard sometimes. Okay. I have a couple that were left over from last time I did this, which I guess was earlier in the week. These two, I have two that, what happened? Hold on a minute. Oh, okay, thank you. I have two that I was sent in by community, which I very much appreciate. I guess I'll just do them in the order. And then I figured I can go to see what's going on the Reddit. So this one's from Chaocalypse's Substack called Sprawling Consequences. Okay, I will add this into the chat. Can I type today? There we go. Now let me just see, do I have any other things I want to do here? Okay. All right. Where's my glasses? All right, here we go. Okay, so first, I guess let me say it. So officially, Sprawling Consequences, a simple way of keeping the world dynamic. Introduction. In order to keep the world feeling real, you have to have consequences for wider scale issues. This particular method is ideal for solo RPGs, but can easily be used for group play as well. It requires minimal tracking. In addition, you are aware of the time limit, which keeps things feeling fair. However, the outcome can still surprise you. There is a chance of the issue getting resolved by someone other than the PCs. Alternatively, it can sprawl and become an issue with even more dire consequences. Issue. When a time-sensitive issue is uncovered, write down the issue and what will happen if it stays unresolved. Consequences can be modified as the situation evolves. And here we have, an example. Marauding bandits. It will be harder to obtain goods as trade becomes more difficult from the settlement. All right, that's a good one. Severity. If the issue is mild, mark it with a dash, indicating a disadvantaged roll on the consequence chart. If the issue is severe, mark it with a plus, indicating an advantaged roll on the consequence chart. So here we see the example updated. So now we have Marauding Bandits, but this time with a plus mark indicating that it is gone severe. It'll be harder to obtain. Okay, so we don't, all right, so yeah. So now it's more severe. The description didn't change, but now we went from Marauding Bandits kind of normal to a severe, what was it? A severe case, severe occurrence, severe, you know what I mean. Incident, severe, sure. Time limit. Roll or decide on a time limit and write it down. For example, 3d6 days. Alternatively, if you're playing an Omega Dungeon, 1d6 delves. So now we've got the example update again. So it's got both that marking for severe and also the marking for the time limit, which in this case is 9 days. Ideally, you should be keeping a simple calendar where the event deadline can be noted. Reward. Optionally, promised rewards for resolving the issues can also be noted down. So here we have the example again. So now added to the list of things, the severity, the time limit, we also have a reward, which in this case, they've written down 2,300 gold pieces. Hey, Croco. Time's up. At the end of the time limit, roll on the consequence chart, D6. 1 to 2, it's been resolved by someone else. Roll or figure out by whom or which faction and what this means. 3 to 4, a consequence occurs, and 5 to 6, consequence sprawls. Evolves into another issue with a more dire consequence. This issue should be rolled at advantage on the consequence chart. And then continuing example. For example, let's say the marauding bandits were not dealt with. The consequences are rolled with advantage. 2d6 take higher, and a result of 5 is obtained. The consequence sprawls. The marauding bandits have become more cocky. If they're not stopped, the new consequence may be that trade comes to a complete standstill. Alternatively, the consequence may be that the villagers get fed up and attack the marauders despite being ill-equipped. ... Yeah, probably not a good call on the villagers' part, but you never know. And apologies if you hear a little buzzing in the background. It's 90 degrees outside today, so we have put on the air conditioning, and this room doesn't get super hot, but it gets warm enough, and with the light that I'm adding in for recording, I've kept the air on, but since I also closed the door, it just means, a little bit more background noise. Okay, so yeah, I like this a lot. I might change these up a little bit because right here, so at the time's up, notice that there's basically equal chances of everything happening, and I would probably go 1 resolved, 2 to 5, it's just kind of keep going, and 6, it sprawls. But also, it might depend on how long it was going. I think I'd want to do, instead of having a, you could have the timer, but I think what might be helpful, though it's a little bit more abstract, is just to have something like, hey, this is your realm region turns, and that's a week. And then what you can do as a GM is once you get to a week of region time, you can track your events and just roll. And that way you don't have to, it's a little bit less dynamic, but you can always play around with, if you want to play around with, did this happen, how it happened, that can be kind of part of the fiction. But I think I like having okay, every time a week goes by, I can roll. I can basically, like you would with factions or something else, I can roll down my turns and I could go through all those events and see which ones have gotten resolved somehow, which ones haven't. And I can just do that in one thing instead of having a whole bunch of little clocks. I think in a solo game, it probably, since I find, at least for me, right, and I haven't played a bunch of solo games, so I intend to do more, is that it's at much more of a leisurely pace where you're sort of contemplating and almost the prep and the kind of going through the mechanics of things is as much part of the experience as any other part. I think at that point, playing that way, I think I could see doing it, having all these rolling deadlines. But I think for a game, especially if you're using some of the rules like, hey, every time you go into a delve, it's basically a week, which I think how AD&D and maybe even OD&D, I think definitely OD&D, and maybe, I don't remember later, but there was essentially this idea that your delve within the dungeon basically takes a week of time. It doesn't matter, it's just between, you put everything together between going in the dungeon, doing everything, you wash them and say, hey, you know what, that delve, it's a week. And that makes it really easy if you are running delves and you're having stuff in the background that basically every time the party comes out of that, goes through and does a delve, that essentially rest, recoup, whatever that week has passed, then you can just roll and everything. Croco says, don't remember the weak part. I think it's there. You're going to make me try to look it up. All right. I'll try. I think it's there. Let me see. Do I have OD&D handy? If Daniel were here, he'd be able to tell me right off the bat. I think it's the case. Let me see if I can find my OD&D books to... Hold on a minute. I have them physically, but I don't have them in arm's reach. I know I had to re-download a couple of them recently. Here we go. All right, I don't think it's in Men and Magic. I'm just going to open all of them. Okay, let's see what we've got. Let's settle this once and for all. Croco says, I guess if you do 1 week per delve, you can just roll at the end or start of the week for each open thread. Yeah, that would be my idea. That's what I think I would do for a group game, just to kind of make it easy. Hey, No Fun Allowed. No Fun Allowed says, I'm fixing to run a West Marches game soon, with the biggest part of the adventure being a mega dungeon castle. Think Beauty and the Beast. Ooh, I think for that, each session will be just 1 day. Yeah, as usual, use these rules with a grain of salt. I was just trying to think back to, what kind of thing it is. And just from my standpoint, what I like about that week is it just like with dungeon turns, with everything, right? It just gives you the standard time. And the nice thing about a week is that what you can just kind of assume is that at the beginning of every session or when you finish the delve, that essentially they're all healed up. You can just say, hey, you're healed, but also time has passed. So on the, you have there is a little bit of a give or take, both on a meta level, and kind of on the player side, I guess you say, and on the GM side. On the player side, if you want to assume that every time you kind of come to a session, you're getting ready to go in dungeon, you guys are all fully healed because you've had that week, great. But it also means that you're spending a week, and if there is timely stuff and other things going on, then time is being spent that you may not want to. And the pace of your campaign and, blah, blah, blah. But now that I've opened these books up, I want to see if I can find it, if it says anywhere. And I'm not sure what book it would be in. I mean, I feel like it should be in Wilderness and or in not Monsters and Treasure, but book 3. So we'll go book 3 first, and we'll see from there. It says in Red OD&D Mega Dungeon, we're down there for 2 months. That's a long time. I guess if you can resupply and do all that stuff, you can. But remember the, quote unquote, buy the book, right? Is really the original style was more or less what we now call West Marches, which was you're ending back in town. So part of that week is traveling back and forth. There's a lot kind of going, right? It might be is it an ADD? Because I know there's an example when he's doing in the Gygax's section on time being so uber important. It might be in there too. Well, let me just see if it's, first we'll see if it's in here. So we have the Underworld. I don't think that's it. Dungeons. Yeah. We're not actually looking at what's in the dungeon. Sample map, tricks and traps. Updating freshness. Okay, that's turn stuff in the dungeons. All right, underworld monsters, wandering monsters, number of monsters, avoiding monsters, dungeon stuff, the wilderness. Let's see, Blackmore. Let's see. Referee's map, okay, rest, scale, turn, days of turn, lost parties, evading, construction, baronies, land combat, movement, naval, yeah, we're in the Navy and air, playing air written, okay, yeah, that's great for... We're doing all kinds of ship. We're still in the waters, and that's it. All right. So, okay, I could be wrong. I mean, not that I am. I am very often wrong. Oh, would it be? Where else might it be? Wilderness? No, it wouldn't be Monsters and Treasure, right? I don't know. Now I don't know. Now I'm starting to doubt myself. If I can't find it, I'll try to ask Daniel tonight if he recalls. When I see him, if he recalls what that is. I'm just going to, let's see if it, these are nice. I can do text search, right? All creatures must rest after 6 days. All right, that's not it. Pinning specialist, no. Time. Let's see. As the campaign goes into full swing, it is probable that there will be various groups going every which way and all at different time periods. It's suggested that a record of each player be kept, the referee checking off each week as it is spent. Reconcile the passage of time thus. Oh, here we go. Oh, look at that. It is there. So, yep, right here. So this is in the reprint. Do I dare reach back to get... I don't know where it is. I mean, I know vaguely where it is, but I guess here. So I couldn't tell you in the original book because I can't get to it. But in this reprint, page 35 to 36, has it. So it says, time as the campaign goes into full swing, it is probable that there will be various groups going every which way and all different time periods. It is suggested that a record of each player be kept, the referee checking off each week as it is spent, reconcile the passage of time thus, and then we have Dungeon Expedition, 1 week, Wilderness Adventure, 1 move equals 1 day, 1 week of actual time, 1 week of game time. So there you go. The time for a dungeon adventure considers only preparations and a typical 1-day descent into the pits. So I think you could probably even generalize that a little bit more and look at it that week you're spending in dungeon includes, as they're saying, prep, one descent, and then recovery on the other side. And you could probably play around with it, but I think it wouldn't be a bad. If you, again, just to make it abstract, to say when you go into a dungeon delve, consider it a week. And that doesn't include the wilderness parts, because remember, your wilderness adventure, you're traveling through the wilderness, you're doing that part of it. But once you're there, that's a week. And then it would include preparation, and you could also say recovery. So the nice thing about that is that you're getting, you can assume if you imagine that let me try to make this. If you imagine your expedition, it's either from a town. So let's say you're playing Keep on the Borderlands. The Keep would probably be your base, and the caves are essentially within easy travel. So you don't have to deal with the wilderness thing. You can if you want to, but it's basically it's certainly within a day. And then go there and back. So you would assume that, hey, you going into the dungeon, you're going into the Caves of Chaos. Okay, so we're going to do that, and we're going to assume between the prepping and stuff and the travel and whatever, since you're in that hex, and then coming back and then resting, it's a week. But so that as players, if you're doing this on a couple of sessions, every session you can just assume you're at full health because you've spent the week recovering. If you're in the wilderness, you can even make a rule that, hey, you're going to have to establish some kind of camp that you can come back to, and that's relatively safe, so that you can have that week, which becomes just another interesting element of, okay, you're not just going to the dungeon and looking like, where are we going to camp tonight? It's like, no, you need to find a spot you've established as being safe, because you're going to be there for multiple days around kind of the camp. And you can even assume, which seems to be the assumption here with the dungeon expedition, though maybe they're assuming that you have a place like the Keep and the Keep of the Borderlands, that you're not, once you've established that encampment, you're not getting wilderness wandering creature checks every day. That you have established a spot that is safe. And of course, things could evolve, people could find you, whatever can happen, but more or less from just the random stuff, you found a spot that, okay, we're safe. Or you could have it be that gets checked every week, like using that Chaocalypse thing of like, hey, something's happened, and it's happened in a week. And then the time for wilderness expeditions also includes rest and recoup. Actual time would not be counted off for players out on a wilderness adventure, but it would be for those registered, sequestered in their dens, hidey holes, keeps, castles, etc., as well as for those in the throes of some expedition underworld. Actual time would not be counted off for players. Okay, so actual time is non-game time. Actual time is real-world time. So if you're on the wilderness expedition, you don't count off real-world time on top of it. But you do if you're in safe, but you also if you're in the expedition in the underworld. So that's an interesting wrinkle. I don't know. I'd be curious as to how that's supposed to work, actually. Now that I'm trying to read that. Is it saying that if you, what is that? I don't know. I don't know what that means. That really means you don't want to, I don't know. I don't know how they would handle if you ended up being a week stuck in the underworld, if the things are rolled, but I guess that means you definitely want to get out. Get out. Get out. Hey, Bruno. Bruno says, was it an expedition back then for the characters to come back to the base town by the end of the session, kind of like West March's campaign? Bruno, I believe that's the intent, yeah. If you read some of the play reports and things of those different gaming groups, yeah, that was definitely the style, is you from town to the dungeon and then back. That was definitely kind of, and it made sense for multiple reasons. You want to get back remember the kind of like in West Marches, or I don't know if it's the same in West March. I guess it's similar, right? You have a pool of players and their characters, and if you want to be available for the next, or you want that a particular character, because oftentimes players would have multiple characters. If you wanted that character to be available, you want to get them back to town. Sometimes you might want to send them off on errands, and I think this is what AD&D, and I guess I can pull up if I can find my digital player's handbook, they talk about, I think in the Dungeon Master's Guide, I think, someone going off to do some research, something else, they go off, and so they're not available. So it's kind of interesting because you get these little risk rewards. Like, hey, I want to go ask this sage an important question, but that's going to take me out of things for a certain amount of days. But it also means that because dungeon delves take a week, you've got some, if you don't send, you might just miss one delve if you go a couple of days and come back. And I imagine they must have been on those missions. They must have either not really been doing wandering creatures and all that for those players sent out, because you're sending out kind of one person. Let me see if I can find my book. Okay. Are we in the DMG? We are in the DMG. Let me see if I can find that section. Frederick says, the old dungeons always had the staircase straight to the end, for those that dare. Crocco says, I wonder how that would actually work out if you have to get to the 12th level every time to continue exploring, but I guess that's what shortcuts level connections are for. Yeah, I think there was, you'd have a fair amount of those. Yeah. But I think also, even if you don't, and this is something that I don't know has gotten carried forward. I don't even know if they did it particularly here, but you have to imagine at some level, the monsters on those preceding levels are going to leave you the F alone. You could imagine when the ogre comes up to the first level, the kobolds probably aren't messing around with the ogre unless they have a bunch of numbers. And so you imagine at some point the players become the ogre. Like the party's down there. They've got, I don't know, 16 people. They seem to be irradiated with magic and gleaming and mail and plate and all kinds of stuff. And you're the kobolds. You're probably going like, hey, you know what? We're just going to wait over here. We're not even going to bother. And I think if you allow that, then the party probably could, if they have these levels well mapped, until they get down at least close to that level, they could probably beeline through a bunch of those because just nobody's going to bother them. They've already gotten there. The party's just been through there a week ago and kicked some butts. They're probably not, the creatures down there are probably not ready for round two. So let them go. But yes, shortcuts are obviously up. All right, let me see if I can find this thing on the infamous time. Look at that. It's got its own section. Okay, here we go. So time in the campaign. Time in the campaign. Game time is of utmost importance. Failure to keep track of time expenditure by player characters will result in many anomalies in the game. Structure of time is what makes recovery. Okay, I'm just going to try to zip down to find. Let's see, where is this bit about? Okay, so here we go. Well, actually, all right, so he's got some example, but let me see if I can find, he's got these A, Bs, kind of way easier to use names. All right, here we go. For the sake of example, let us assume that you begin your campaign on day 1 of the year 1000. There are 4 player characters who begin initially, and they have adventures which will last a total of 50 days. 6 days of actual adventuring, and 44 days of actual resting and other activity. So just right off the bat, this is a pretty interesting breakdown of time, because I would think that in most modern games, modern campaigns, that's almost flipped entirely on its head, where you're spending 44 days of adventuring and just a kind of a week or less of resting and other activities. But in this case, right, and this again seems to be leaning into this idea that, hey, these delves, even if they only take not that much time in time in the dungeon, you're kind of adding up bulk time around it. At this point in time, 2 new players join the game. One of the original group decides to go seek the advice of an oracle after hiring an elven henchman, and the remaining 3 quote-unquote old boys decide they will not go with the newcomers. So on day 51, player A's character is off on a journey. Those of B, C, and D are resting on their laurels, and E and F enter the dungeon. The latter pair spend the better part of the day surviving, but do well enough to rest a couple of game days and return for another try on day 54. So in this case, it looks like Gygax is not saying that, or I guess at least it's implying that we're not counting just a dungeon delve as just flat a week, because players E and F enter the dungeon, spend a day, and then rest afterwards. But it doesn't seem like it's a week, because they go back in on day 54, which would be 3 days after they went in the first time. Okay, so on day 54, where they stumble upon the worst monster on the first level, surprise it and manage to slay it and come out with a handsome treasure. You pack it in for the night. 4 actual days later, and it is best to use 1 actual day for 1 game day when no play is happening. On day 55, players B, C, and D enter the dungeon and find the area they selected has already been cleaned out by player characters E and F. Had they come the day after the previous game session, game day 52, and done the same thing, they would have found the monster and possibly gotten the goodies. What to do about that, and what about old A and his pointy-eared chum off to see the Oracle? Okay, so I'm not really trying to get in the weeds on the mathematics of this stuff because I feel like it can get kind of complicated, right? So you as the GM are supposed to keep track of your calendar and which thing to do. But I really just wanted to I really wasn't trying to get in the weeds on that. But I really wanted to see if they, just to recollect about what happens really with just old A. Old A and his pointy-eared chum. Some penalty must accrue to the non-active, but on the other hand, the overactive cannot be given the world on a silver platter. Despite time differences, the activities of the newcomers to the campaign should be allowed to stand, as destiny has decreed that the monster in question could not fall to the characters B, C, and D. Therefore, the creature was obviously elsewhere, not dead, when they visited its lair on day 52. All right, hold on. So day 51... E and D go in, then they go back on day 54. If the other guy, okay. Blah, blah, blah. But did they go on day 52? Had they? Okay, so he sort of says that they come on day 55, but then he make kind of they come on day 52, but then he's running with day 52, and I really don't even, this is really, okay, let me get to the part I care about, because at the moment, not that it's not interesting, at the moment I'm not really trying to get into the Dungeoneer part. So returning to player character A and his trek to visit a far-off source of supernatural lore, he and his elven companion set off on day 51, journey across the land for 11 days, visit the Oracle and remain 3 days, then come back in another 11 days. Wonder of wonders. This comes to a total of 25 days all told, counting day 51. So they come home, quote unquote, on day 75 and are set to adventure on day 77, let's suppose, after a brief rest is in order. So I guess the interesting thing here, and I don't know if it's just because he's not trying to get in the weeds, but I'm curious if in actual practice they were rolling for encounters that whole time, or if you wanted to send somebody off on a side mission, do you make 1 roll? I mean, you don't want it to necessarily be, I don't know if you want to give it I guess it doesn't matter, right? Give them 100%. They're going off to do, like, it's a downtime kind of activity, so maybe use more downtime rolls and kind of active rolls there alone person. So whereas, yeah, the wilderness is dangerous, it also means that they're going to have the best chance to escape. Maybe I just do it for the journey and use some percentages depending on how long they're gone. I'm not sure. But it's interesting. That's really just what I want. I don't even remember how I got here. We got here because I was looking for the dungeon delving for a week, and then I guess I was curious about the wilderness one day, how that would apply to this person. But of course, at this point, he's an ADD, so he's looking at things a little bit differently. It's not, you can't necessarily backport this to say this is what Gygax would have said about OD&D, but it's interesting. All right, Krako says, I think return to the keep on the borderland, interesting thing, where the enemy in the dungeon got some powerful reinforcements and drove out another faction the longer the players waited. Might be interested to extrapolate that for an entire mega dungeon. You can have, you probably should, for a mega dungeon, have, similar to those wilderness events, have dungeon events, which it could be, hey, a new faction shows up. A new faction. I think I know I came up with some, maybe I didn't share it anywhere, but I know I had some. It was just a simple D6 of, something happens, like nothing happens, get a new faction, a faction gets stronger, maybe a faction, or there's conflict between factions. I think it's a good idea. I think it definitely keeps things fresh. And I think it's something, obviously, you want the players to know on some level that if they're leaving these places alone, stuff's going to be percolating. And you could even work that in with these, if you're using this kind of consequences thing, is give the factions in your dungeon these same sorts of things. And then depending on if nothing happens on that week, there's nothing going on, you roll for them as well to see what's going on in the dungeon. And you could even have at some point, if one faction gets strong enough or whatever you have going on, that faction spills out of the dungeon and does something to the countryside, whatever that is. Frederick says, mess with the players with the competing adventure rival party. Yeah, that could be fun too. That could be fun. I wouldn't, and Krako says, yeah, I probably want to have a table for a mega dungeon unless you feel like designing 5 years of events. No, have a table. I mean, if I was publishing a mega dungeon, sure, I might have an appendix where I'd go through and do a bunch of that. But no, just make a table. I mean, even if I was publishing, I'd probably want to make a table. It's easier. It's more flexible. Okay. Thanks so much for sharing that one. I think, Croco, you shared that one, right? That's yours. And then this one from the Dungeons of Signs blog, which is not new. In fact, it's 9 years old, but it's new to me. And necessity. That's where we are now. I did look at this briefly just because I was loading up. You could tell its age, obviously, besides the date. It's also referencing Volo's Guide to Monsters from 5th edition. This is not a 5th edition article, from what I understand, just as I was scrolling through it. So I'm just kind of skip down. I guess I'm going to start here, which kind of gets past the preamble about 5e, because it's really about, I think it's more about unique monsters, etc. Who does this? So this is on the Dungeons of Signs blog. Do we have a particular author? I do not see one. Okay, I think that's supposed to be an I've been playing in Ben of Marazin's Gardens Dreamlands game a bit, and I've noticed that one of the things I enjoy is that we have yet to encounter any monster from a book, at least as far as description and characterization goes. To me, this is the mark of a good campaign and good world building. Using unique monsters means, among other things, that the GM needs to describe them and that the players need to think about them as more than a reference to a monster manual. One of my major complaints about published modules, and even the 5e monster manual, is a lack of description for monsters beyond dull formalities. There's a balance in designing pre-made monsters, somewhere between several pages of likely dull with Elminster invoked of genre fiction, the Volo's Guide promises, and the terse statistics-based descriptions found in the Little Brown Books. I'm not sure where exactly it lies. Certainly, Fire on the Velvet Horizon is pretty lyrical on its monster descriptions, but it's a fun read because its descriptions are full of evocative detail that gets a GM thinking about how to use the monsters described within. And of course, anything done well is better than the best thing done badly. Croco says, unique monsters are great, never enough monsters. Indeed. Personally, however, I have little use for monster manuals, even good ones. For me, the aesthetics of monsters aren't hard to think up and design, and the most important element about an encounter is that it makes sense in the setting. I tend to run non-standard settings, and making monsters that fit those settings, tell stories about the setting, and generally provide a point for player interaction, wonder, and decision-making is often far easier than fitting monsters from other sources into a non-standard setting. Okay, that was a mouthful, but basically, since he's doing non-standard setting, non-standard monsters make the most sense. Frederick says, it is a lot of fun to pull a Scooby-Doo. The monster turns out to be a store owner back in town. The orcs are just people wearing masks. Yeah, though I think... So, what was that movie? The 13th Warrior did that a bit. I guess spoilers for the 13th Warrior. Where the monsters or the individuals that the village people thought were monsters were really just people wearing stuff. And I think that works a bit. It even gets stretched in the 13th Warrior because some of the stuff, it's a little bit of a, I love the 13th Warrior. Okay. I know it's not a lot of people find a lot of flaws, and I love it just unabashedly. I adore the movie, and I look past each and every flaw. The one thing that always gets me a little bit is they fight with them in the dark. So again, spoilers for the 13th Warrior, the first conflict, or I guess the first conflict between the Vendo and the Vikings, or Bolvai's crew anyway, takes place at night in the Longhouse, and they're waiting awake, and they're pretending to sleep, and then the Vendo, they or Grendel, because I guess it's like Grendel, right? They bust down, they burst through the doors, and they come down through the ceiling, and they come in, they're all over the place, and they show the melee, and they show a couple of Vikings don't make it, and more than a couple of the Vendo or Grendel or whatever, they don't make it. But at the end of it, when it seems like hours have passed, they always do it in the movies where it'll be after and it'll seem like midday and suddenly it's night. In this case, it's like the sun's now coming up. We don't know what time they attacked, whatever. But in any case, they're gasping for breath, but the survivors have survived, and they've driven back the enemy, and there's no bodies. And this is what's leads them to believe, at least initially, that they might, like, what kind of monsters are these? And they know that they stabbed them and they hacked into them, and they know that they seem to have damaged them, and there's blood on some of their weapons, but there's no bodies. And I always find that a little bit unbelievable. I just don't think in the chaos, they are normal people. They don't have dark vision. They don't have anything. How are they keeping track of every one of the people that's fallen, given that it's all dark in there? They're very little light. Somebody falls on the ground. I mean, even I make a point with when the Vikings are trying to sort out, like, they're looking for some of their comrades who died, and they're going like, oh, here's his body, it's over here. And how did the enemy somehow had the wherewithal in this chaos of a melee to be grabbing all their bodies and get them out? And that's not easy to do. Some of them would be jumping down. It wasn't like they were coming in through open doors anyway. They just drugged them out, and nobody saw them do it. It just was always a little bit like, how does that work? And so, just to get back to the Scooby-Doo thing, I think it's fine if they're wearing masks, right? But it's gonna be apparent really close. The only reason why in that movie it even works for the first encounter is because it's dark and they're wearing bare stuff, so that they have basically bare heads and things, so that you can't really tell what they are. If it's in the light of day or there's any kind of time, unless you insert magic into it, which you can. But if you insert magic into it, I just don't buy. Like, that's something that if somebody told me after so many encounters with orcs, suddenly like, aha, it's the townsfolk, I'd be like, that's some BS right there. So you telling me that I'm up in somebody's grill with my two-hander and he's got some kind of magic Tom Cruise Mission Impossible synthetic mask on that I can't see through, whatever. I mean, you can always invoke magic, right? But, be careful with that, as I'm saying. Yes, it can be a lot of fun. It can also, I feel like it can also feel incredibly cheap. And often in Scooby-Doo, it also feels incredibly cheap. So if it feels cheap in Scooby-Doo, almost intentionally so, just, beware. Croco says, reverse Scooby-Doo, the monsters were people wearing masks of monsters controlled by real monsters. Yes. Or you could do something like The Twilight Zone. There are those episodes, at least there's one of them where someone puts on a mask and their face becomes the mask. So that could be cool too. So the more they act beast-like, then they actually become the beasts. All right, let's get back to the blog. Managing unique monsters. Every monster in the Dreamlands is unique. Mole rat men, weird slime people, root kings, a multi-armed something with a big hungry mouth. Okay, are mole rat men really that unique? Whatever, it's fine. It's fine. I mean, it's not. It's fine. I'm not trying to. I feel like I mean, and I'm not making myself as some kind of like, oh, I'm unique, and they're not. It's like we all end up doing them. We all end up like there's always those memes of people inventing the same games over and over again. We're all inventing the same monsters over and over again. This is wonderful. As a player, one must use one's own estimates of what looks dangerous, what might be friendly, and what special attacks or defenses a creature might have. In making these tactical decisions, the player is engaging in thinking about the setting fiction rather than trying to remember what the statistics of a goblin or troll are in the latest monster manual or what some other well-known fantasy beast might do. So I will want to insert a little bit. It's not, yes, this is true, but I think there's, I don't say a drawback, but sometimes, and this is something, again, that can be a frustration if you don't, as a GM, kind of don't handle, not I want to say handle it properly, but you got to kind of work it out. One of the nice things about knowing, having an idea of what a monster is that you understand the power level. Oh, it's goblins. They might be powerful, right, in a bunch of them, but generally speaking, they're equal to a normal man or whatever, or a level 1, let's say, or somewhere in between. And then, of course, if you dress one up and make one seem bigger or stronger, then as a player, you can kind of gauge the power level. Let's say you run up against a say a slime person. As a player, how are you supposed to gauge the power level relative to you of a slime person? Now, if you're playing by some of the things like in the olden days, if you're on level 3 of the dungeon, you run a plus a slime person, that'll give you a pretty good range of where that slime person slots in, which can be a very useful thing. Like, okay, we're on level 3 of the dungeon, and given that sometimes more powerful things can wander in and sometimes less powerful things can end up there, maybe you say, all right, it's got to be between, say, 1 HD and 5 HD. Just as a general thing, right? But if it's in the wilderness or if you're not using that kind of thing, it's kind of hard. And Croco says, got to test it, I guess. Yeah, but testing it means you could die. Depending on what strength level it really is and what you are, could be, it could just be a death sentence. And is that how you want things to go, where it's like either you have to spend hirelings or somebody else to go up and do it, or you end up in a combat avoidance. Like, well, until we know we can take the thing, we're not going to try to take the thing. And those are all, I mean, and the thing is about doing that, that's fine. And I think there's certainly what I think could be a very fun sort of game in which the party enters a dungeon or is out in the wilderness, sees a slime person, and then they disengage or try not to engage as much as possible, and then send player A with a pointy-eared companion to a sage and say, "Hey, we've just seen a slime person in the woods. What's the deal with that?" And figure out where it stands. Like you can do that, but you just make sure that you're ready and your game's ready to support those things, to support that. Oh, we saw something, we don't know what it is, and we don't want to die. So we're going to leave it alone, and we're going to go figure it out, and we're going to do the research and try to gauge what it is, and then understand whether, can we talk to it? Is it really strong? Could be very useful to, find out all that stuff. But you have to, the players have to understand those, have to know those mechanisms are in there, and you as a GM have to honor those mechanisms. Because otherwise, it just becomes, you don't want it to feel like it's just, am I rolling to die? Because even if you say as a player, I'm not going to engage, all it takes is one bad reaction roll and a surprise roll that you fail to have slime guy on you before you even have a chance to do anything, especially in a dungeon, right? Oh, we failed our surprise round. Up, they're 30 feet away. Up, slime guy's really a 8 HD pseudo demon, and up there goes 5 slime tentacles that act as, dissolving gelatinous cube stuff, and suddenly I'm out, and it's like, well, what was I supposed to do? So you got to balance it. Like I also love unique monsters, but it does have that challenge of, as a player, it's not bad to have that meta knowledge of stuff that's in monster manuals. You could look at it a little bit as that's part of your cultural heritage. Just like we have tales of, just in the real world, we have all these tales about vampires that tells us that vampires are really strong and difficult, whatever. So if I see a vampire in real life, I know something about it if it's vampiric because I know something about vampires. That's not a cheat. And it's not a bad thing, or a werewolf, or an ogre in real life. Even if I didn't play role-playing games, my wife doesn't play D&D, but she knows if she saw something look like an ogre and someone said, "Oh my gosh, it's an ogre," she knows to get the heck out of Dodge. That's not a bad thing. And your player characters could have similar knowledge. So, balance it out. This is where I think having some way of, if you want to have a rolling a die or something else to say, does somebody know what a slime person? Oh, is a slime person? Roll to see if anybody knows what a slime person is or something about it. Have the mechanisms to give people clue, because it's as fun as to run into unique things all the time. It's not fun when it feels like you're kind of playing Russian roulette with the situation. Quaco says it should be handled via description, but that's hard. So the problem or the challenge with description is something that's powerful doesn't necessarily exude power physically. Like a gelatinous cube, which can dissolve you easily, right? It doesn't look, if you're describing the gelatinous cube, unless you're always going to have a gelatinous cube with the corpse inside it, but sometimes they might be empty, sometimes whatever. You don't know. It's like assuming you can see it, right? Let's just assume that the gelatinous cube has some coloration, so it's not invisible against the walls of the dungeon. So let's say it has that classic greenish tinge to it. So you see, it looks like a green block of Jell-O that's moving, that's slowly sliding towards you. Now you may, since you know gelatinous cubes for the most part, we'll go, oh gosh, it's a gelatinous cube, we got to be careful. If you don't, if you're totally new, how are you supposed to get, I'm not being wrong with my description, but that's what you see. I mean, a slime person might just be sitting there. I mean, look at a spider. Yeah, it's a spider. Okay, do you know that spider's going to kill you if you fail your save? No, but at least we know about spiders in the real world, so we know about poison and stuff like that. What if it's just something else, but it's a plant, but it's got a similar spider thing? Like, what if it doesn't necessarily trend? You can't always, not always are the descriptions going to match the power level. And sometimes that's on purpose. The thing that looks small, like Yoda, like, judge me by my size, do you? Right? It doesn't look like much, and then it kicks your butt. So I don't know. You just got to be, balance everything. Be careful. Don't think that just because you threw it out there that people are going to kind of magically know. And if you're doing everything unique, they're not going to know. So, you got to kind of plan for folks to be struggling a little bit and give them the options, give them opportunities and options to figure out what's going on, because you can't always describe it. Croco says you can also have a black dragon hiding in a swamp to ambush something. Not much should be done about that. Right. I mean, that's also very true. But with the black dragon, and it depends on the thing. You might say that the swamp around the black dragon would show signs of the dragon, but that's not true for everything. Right. It's just that when something's happening and it's a black dragon comes out of the thing, you know what a black dragon is. Imagine it was a black dragon, but it looked like a kobold covered in goop that comes out of the swamp. You don't necessarily know what to expect about that. You can't know that on the DM side, it's the stats of a black dragon, and that's really like a slime demon, but it looks like a kobold covered in grease. Like, you just, as a player, you don't know. Whereas a dragon, you're like, oh gosh, it's a dragon. You just got to be careful. You just got to account for it. I'm not trying to say don't use. I would say definitely use unique monsters, but I think there is challenges. I feel like sometimes they're kind of glossing over the challenging part of running unique monsters, because it ain't all fun. It ain't all fun in games. Sometimes it can feel, like I said, it can feel like you've been gotcha'd or tricked or something like that. That's not what you want people to feel. I mean, maybe every once in a while, like, haha, this is like a fooled you from Spaceballs, but not all the time. Okay, now Dreamlands isn't using Pathfinder in 5e, and designing monsters with statistics for basic D&D, huzzah, is not meant mechanically difficult, though thinking up interesting special abilities using varied rule sets can be. However, it's far easier to simply reskin existing monsters and use their statistics, adding or subtracting special abilities and tricks as necessary, and one can manage this trick in almost any system. Moreover, reskinning and inventing monsters makes a GM notice something, that really there aren't that many stat lines, or types of monsters that players face. What's necessary for play? What makes foes distinctive is either their place in the game world, how the players can interact with them as NPCs, their descriptions, and sometimes unique abilities or tricks that make combat with them interesting. Taking a look at the Little Brown Books, which I believe contain the first tabletop monster manual, which I've slowly been going through thinking about the monsters within, one notices that monsters described within are often very similar. For example, the level 1 table for random encounter on page 10 of Underworld and Wilderness Adventures lists 8 possible encounters that are the weakest sort of random encounters. Referencing Monster and Treasure and making some guesses for the monsters not typically listed, centipedes, spiders, and giant rats are all small animals or insects with 1 hit point and AC 8. One discovers that first-level parties will likely encounter a fair number of kobolds, weak or intelligent, goblins, weak or intelligent, or I guess is that weak, maybe weak and intelligent kobolds, weak and, okay, so it must be the slash must be and, just trying to understand this table. Kobolds, weak and intelligent, goblins, weak and intelligent, skeletons, weak or normal and intelligent. I don't think skeletons are intelligent, but okay. Orcs, normal, intelligent, giant rats, weak, animal, or maybe the intelligence is a type. I don't know. Weak. So basically, you have kind of, he's just breaking down in sort of their weak. You're an animal. Centipedes, weak and an animal. They have poison. Bandits, normal, intelligent. Spiders, a very weak animal with special poison. Ooh, Croco got an idea. They're gonna post. Nice. Please do. One can break these into a few categories, even with some minor variation. A, weak intelligent combatants. B, normal intelligent combatants. C, very weak animals. Some maybe with a form of poison. Monster strength is broken into 3 categories. The very weak, generally AC 8 and 1 HP. The weak, with half a hit die, 1 or 1 to 1 HD and AC 6 or 7. Okay, and normal. So basically, you're right. I'm just going to, because it's not exactly rolling off the tongue to read through all that stuff. But basically, categories. Obviously, as one goes deeper into the dungeon, these monsters increase in hit dice, but the progression makes a reasonable amount of sense. For a 4th level party, weak monsters should be 2 hit dice, while very strong enemies might have somewhere close to 16 hit dice. This is even reflected in Underworld and Wilderness Adventures, with subsequent levels of the dungeon encounter tables containing creatures in the ranges described. Progress says most of these monsters don't really have much difference in strength. Yeah, I mean, I'd have to look at. I mean, we could look at it. Well, I got the books. All right, where is? Nope. Yep. So where are the monsters? So let's see. So yeah, see, even here they make it even more. Goblins and kobolds are basically the same. 1 to 1.5 hit dice. Orcs. Interesting that goblins potentially have more hit dice than orcs. I wouldn't have thought that. Hobgoblins and gnolls. 1 plus. Oh, no, maybe they're. No, wait. I can't be right. 1 minus 1.5. I feel like maybe half. I feel like something's not quite right there. Maybe that's supposed to be half a hit die, 1 hit die, 1.5 hit die. I feel like that makes most sense. This must be printing error. Man, now it's making me want to get out my book. Where did I put you? Hold on. Oh, I got 3 books here. None of them are the ones I want. Blackmore, Greyhawk, Men in Magic. I don't know where my other ones are. I'll have to dig them up and then maybe I'll have to come back to that. All right. Oh, wait. Son John says 1 minus 1 AD. I see. Okay. And half AD for Cobalt. Oh, all right. I wonder why they put them together then. They could, I don't know, maybe probably just trying to save space. All right. That definitely makes more sense. Thanks, John. Appreciate you. But you can, yeah. So I mean, it would be cool to go through this. I don't doubt that the blog writer is correct with the kind of progression. All right, so let's keep going. Behaviorally, the monsters on level 1 on the level 1 table are also quite similar. All the intelligent ones, goblins, kobolds, bandits, and orcs, are going to act in a quasi-militaristic manner, but might be open to negotiation. Skeletons may fall in this category as well, though they might fit better with the animal attackers, depending on how the undead are treated in the game world. I'm not sure why they keep saying, isn't it? Maybe they don't say, but do they say about skeletons? I feel like skeletons are not in D&D. They're not intelligent. Skeletons and zombies act only under the instructions of their motivator, be it a magic user or cleric. They're usually only found near graveyards, forsaken places, and dungeons, but there's a possibility of their being located elsewhere to guard some item. There was never any morale check. They always attack until totally wiped out. Yeah, so I'm not sure why they keep saying skeletons are intelligent. They're just going to act under instructions. They're constructs. They'd probably be better under. Really, in this, the way they're written out there, they're basically constructs. It's clear that skeletons and zombies in the OD&D context are not naturally occurring. They are created. Krakow says skeletons are only smart as their razor, I guess. I don't even think so. I think that they just get an instruction and they follow it. So you can give it instructions, but presuming that whoever raised them isn't there to give them new instructions, they're just going to attack until they're killed. I mean, that's pretty clear. They will always attack until totally wiped out, and that they can act only under the instructions. So I would just go with them like a construct, basically. Maybe even more limited than a construct. I don't know. But they don't, I guess constructs, I was going to say they don't run out of batteries, but I guess constructs don't either. Okay, the Little Brown books are a bit unclear on the numbers. That's fine. The last element of the mechanics of monster design is a foe's special abilities. While the list above shouldn't have any special abilities, I've included the poison ability for centipedes and spiders out of a desire to have at least some variation in the encounter list. Poison is a nasty special ability, but there are plenty of other quote-unquote tricks monsters can have: breath weapons, spell casting, weapon immunity, a lot of attacks, regeneration, etc. And offering the players chances to learn and adapt to these abilities, or guessing them prior to an encounter, is one way to make monster encounters more fun and interesting. Still, these 4 elements, type, strength, intelligence, number, and special abilities, can mechanically define pretty much all monsters. Below, I've created a set of tables for generating the mechanical elements of a random encounter table. One can roll a smaller die for generating less powerful monsters, and roll separately in each column, though I'd suggest, okay, so and then you get this thing. So you can get like weak, bloop, bloop. That's very cool. I feel like I could definitely use that for some stuff. John Miller says, if they recall correctly, Collins pointed out that at least one printing of OD&D had a typo regarding the HD of undead, skeletons versus zombies. Skeletons are supposed to be 1 and zombies 2. I know that is, and Krakow asks, isn't that there? Like, yes, they are like that later. What does it say on this? Did they fix that? Quote unquote, fix it? So this has half to 1. But yeah, I think, and in fact, it probably, if we go to turn undead, where is it? Do we have turn undead here? Did I skip turn undead? Okay, there's intro. Yeah. Fighting men, magic users, clerics. Where's turn undead? Okay. Clerics gain some of the advantages of both the two classes, and that they have the use of magic armor and all non-edged magic weapons. Plus, they have numbers of their own spells. Where is the turn undead toggle? Is it in combat? Men attacking, monsters attacking, saving throw. Where's turn undead? No matches were found. Yeah, half should be one. Right. Yeah, I was looking for the turn undead because it has in there, but it's not in there. Did they not have turn undead? Have I gone bonkers? Oh no, John, yeah, the tables, I mean, sometimes you got to read these things. You got to kind of squint a bit. It's like the Judges Guild tables. They got some great stuff, but then sometimes it's hard to figure out. What edition did Turn Undead? Is Turn Undead really not an OD&D? Is that? I just can't. Is it not there? Try Matrix for turning undead. Am I just blind? No. All right, here are the matrices. Monsters, saving throw. Is it in a different book? Oops, well, I need to spell it correctly first. Oh, here it is. Oh, okay. Ooh, Clerics versus Undead Monsters is what it's called. And it's by the spell table. Okay. Well, I guess it's... So here, you can see that it should be skeletons. So the only reason why I went down this rabbit hole was because skeletons and zombies... I guess they don't say, but this is, it's just reiterating... It's kind of one, because these basically go up in order of hit dice. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, kind of like that. So, all right, finally, good there, because I was going crazy. I was thinking, like, did I totally been wrong? But yeah, so if you're looking for Turn Undead in OD&D, gotta look for Clerics versus Undead Monsters. Pooh, okay. There we go. All right. Well, I think that's about it. I got to get ready to rock and roll. I'm just going to take a quick look in case there's something short and sweet on Reddit. Let's see. What's this? Well, this might be fun. John Miller says, fun fact regarding turning Dan Boggs, who blogs at Hidden in Shadows, has a post where he discusses Arneson's original rule for turning undead and literally just made the undead turn away for one round, like Dracula turning away to avoid looking at a cross. Oh, that's cool. It becomes a lot less useful, but cool. I mean, that's almost an interesting, because I did a revised turn undead thing, and that would be a very interesting thing to do. Is if depending on how strong, depending on your target, and you could be how long you're able to keep it turned. So if you're a low-level cleric and you're going up against Dracula, 1 round is about what you're going to get. If you're a high-level cleric against Dracula, then you get multiple rounds, as opposed to running away. Kraka also does something similar where they just keep out of reach. Got to keep your holy symbol out. Indeed. All right. So let's read this really quick. This is posted by BX_disciple on the OSR subreddit. Might be preaching to the choir, but if you get a chance to go and read, okay. I thought there might be something actual in there. It's just saying, go read the West End game Star Wars RPG 1st and 2nd edition. I mean, I agree. Go read it, but I was hoping for something similar. Okay. One last thing. Anything? This sounds cool, but I feel like it's going to be way too big. Yeah, it's a little bit too long. Yeah, I'll have to come back to that. I'll have to put this in a note for the next one. Druidic stronghold maps, experience with errant. Caverns of Thracia is a delight to read. The mysterious missing chamber. Look as you might, you will not find this room on the map. It was never there. It never was there and exists only in the mind of the designer, who refused to admit that he may have made an oversight when numbering his creation. It doesn't feel like sticking the number 102 somewhere on the map and letting it go like that. Yes, that is nice. All right. Now, I don't know if I'm the only one that feels this way, and it's going to be an odd thing for me to say as someone who is trying to promote their own materials. Am I the only one that finds that a lot of the OSR spaces are kind of dominated now by people posting their for sale stuff? And I don't. It's not something like I don't have anything against them, and I got to do it too. But I mean, I post a lot of stuff that's not for sale, and I do a lot of things like these videos that aren't. They're just for kind of chit chatting about game stuff. But I find out some of the things it's like for sale, and it's weird because obviously, as someone who's trying to publish their own stuff, I don't mean to say that people shouldn't be allowed to do it or anything, but I feel like now when I come on to the OSR subreddit and even some of the other OSR groups, just so much of the material is just, I got a new thing coming out on Kickstarter, or I got a new thing. And I guess I just wish it was balanced a bit more by maybe some of the same people. And I know some people publish a lot of stuff and they also put out a lot of stuff, but I don't know. Just, I kind of lament for days of yore when there's a lot more kind of blog posty stuff and less Kickstarter stuff. Croco's got a short one about Thieves Skills. Post it, Croco. Let's go. Let's go. I got time for one mo. I do need to check out this Hidden in Shadows blog. Let me search that up while I'm waiting for Croco to post his thing. Hidden in Shadows. There, that must be it. Bogswood. The Weird, the Wonderful, and the Garbage Pits of Despair. Very nice. Has he updated his blogger layout in a while? I feel like could use a little help. Post it in Discord. All right, let me see the Discord. Oh, Rise of Comus. I know Rise of Comus. John says that post is about an adventure Arneson wrote for Different Worlds. Oh, cool. I will definitely come back and check out that, maybe even tomorrow, if I can't get my act together with a regular video. Okay, so Rise of Comus from 2020, and I'll post this in the chat. This is called Thief's Knacks. Oh, Boggs sounds like got amazing stuff. I mean, I joke a little bit on the blog thing. For me, it's not. I don't really care so much about the design, but it just affects the readability a little bit. This is where I'm kind of like, hey, maybe lighten up the background. You could probably do something and get a little more spacing in there so your text is not right up against where it gets really dark and I forget what's that term? Like sepia kind of tone thing, burned tone. All right, Thief Snacks. Ostensibly, this is still an OSR blog, so here's some OSR content. Some people have problems with the Thief. Wait, so what do I need to roll if I'm a fighter and I'm trying to pick a lock? Can I just not do it? B, okay, so I am a thief and I am picking a pocket. Holy ish, I only have 20% to succeed? I kind of stink. See, hang on, so the wizard can just cast knock and then turn invisible? Okay, let the damn wizard break it and steal the teapot then. Some people have proposed generous rule interpretations so you play the thief straight and fix some of those perceived problems. Some people have translated the percentile table to a D20 table to resolve the multiple type of resolution mechanics in the game. Personally, I really like Lamentations' D6 skill rolls and how the specialists gain points in it. It's my favorite base rule set for most of this reason. Here's another thing to do with Thief Knacks. A village witch once told me that a thief was actually a very, very specialized sorcerer. The missionary from O told me that actually thieves tapped into their psi powers. The Beggars Guild told me that the Thieves Guild was actually a cult and whispered of forbidden rites of ancestor worship and the terrifying grave of deified guild masters deep in the vaults of Thief House. Hey, John. Well, cheers and thanks for hanging out. Glad you could make it. Whatever the truth, all thieves have 7 supernatural abilities. Some can use them more frequently than others. Anybody can sneak. The thief makes the sign of silence and stills the air around him. Anybody can climb a wall. The thief uses the invocation of the spider and runs to the top of the Tower of the White Elephant. Basically, whenever you're trying to do something by mundane means, use your rule set's resolution mechanics, a d6 roll, a tribute test, whatever. A thief can choose to use one of their knacks instead. They can use each of their 7 knacks once per day. When a knack is used, roll on the thief's percentile skill table. On success, the knack is refreshed, may be used again. On a failure, the knack is gone until the next time the sun crosses the horizon. Yes, that means that thieves can use their knack skills once during the day and then once again during the night. Haha, okay. Here are the knacks. They have boring names. Thieves who use them understand that naming things with flair to be one of their primary duties. So you have, basically, I think these are your, climb sheer surfaces, find and disarm traps, hear noise, hide in shadows, move silently, pick locks, pickpockets. I mean, it's cool. It's not for me, I don't think. I think one thing that's nice about the thief, as opposed to the magic user, is they don't have those kind of limits. It's they're very skilled but mundane. So I kind of like if I was going to make, what do you call those? The circles, the overlapping, circles kind of thing, right? You've got, actually, that's not even what I want to do. What I want to say is you have these kind of quadrants. If you're going to break up the game in sort of quadrants, there's essentially 3, depending on how you feel about it, the thieves, basically, there's kind of 3 quadrants of the game. 1, it's sort of brute force. 2, magic. And 3 is like craftiness, cleverness, kind of that kind of thing. And that's where the thief lies. And then the cleric is actually kind of in the middle. They have a little bit of the craft part, because I look at turning undead as essentially as craft part. They have some of the brute force part, because they can wear armor and do stuff, and they have spells, so they have some of the magic parts. So you kind of have, if you're, I guess, maybe more of a triangle, fighter, magic user, thief, and kind of cleric in the middle. And I think, just like with the fighter, there's what makes the fighter and the thief different from the magic user is that, the magic user is very strong, but they've got limits put on it. And I don't mind the kind of supernatural nature of the sheer walls, thing like that, as Cleve's being really good at it. But I don't want to turn it into like you're kind of a magic user by another name. It just, I don't know. I don't like it. And I kind of like thinking about it in that kind of 3. And having it be something like, like as a thief, you're not as strong as a wizard, but you can climb all day long. Go climbing away. Whereas that knock spell, whatever the wizard can do, they can do it only a couple. I mean, granted, at higher levels, becomes more and more, and that's a kind of a separate issue. But you cast knock. After that, you're done. I'll be picking locks until the cows come home. Cargo says, I always flop around about how to rule thief skills. Should probably decide sometime. I just think that they are skilled to the point of being somewhat, at least at later levels, kind of supernatural about it. And my kind of work I've done on my own sort of skill system kind of emphasizes this, but sort of makes it more or less a generic thing you can apply to any kind of skill. But yeah, that's just the way I like it. But this is cool. It's cool. I mean, it's got really nice flavor, I think, for a certain world to have thieves being these kind of sorceress types. But then I don't know, why not just have a sorcerer? It kind of almost feels like just get rid of the thief and have a sorcerer who can do that stuff. So I guess if I'm going to go the magic route for thieves, then there's just no thieves. Everyone can do thief stuff, just how you try to do it, maybe. And that magic user types do it through magic, or at least a spell. Sorcerers do it through some kind of other primal magic connection, and then fighters do it through mundane methods. So, maybe go with that. But cool. And that was quick, so I appreciate it. Thanks for everyone for hanging out with me as we go through these. If I can't manage to get a video done tomorrow, I will do another one of these. I'll try to get, I got to get back on schedule of actually scheduling these out some. But, I'm just flying by the seat of my pants right now. Anywho, gotta run. Thanks for hanging out. Enjoy the rest of your day, night, whenever you end up watching or listening to this. Game on, everybody. And I'll talk to you later. Bye now.